Okay. The next one, and I think that'll probably be this for the last one for this session, Jack, is from Daniel McMorrow. Now, Daniel has an interesting one. So Daniel talks about incentives for the sales team. So I imagine he means compensation by that. And what he says is, he's curious as to how do you incentivize sales teams where you expect the salespeople to collaborate? So especially where it looks like they have customers that find them online. So these are inbound opportunities. And it sounds like he has multiple different people in his team touching this opportunity. So how do we incentivize people to collaborate? Almost like if you think about a restaurant where instead of the waiter getting their own tips, they pool their tips and then it gets distributed to everyone at the end of the night, right? How do you run a sales team where you expect them to collaborate? And he had previously gotten some advice that maybe you should think about rewarding activities and not just the commission dollar value. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I went and just said, you know what, I'm going to leave all that compensation alone. Because if we dive in the compensation of salespeople, that's beyond the question. So I went a different approach and said, what could I do additive to the way the question was phrased? And I came up with team contest. And I like a mix of different contests. And what I would recommend to Daniel is that if you go to my website at jackdalysales.com, I have 4 magazines that are 32 pages apiece called Get Jacked, and you can download those for free. And one of them has an entire article on sales contests. And we've used these contests very, very effectively with sales organizations. So I'll just describe 2 very quickly, and then I'll just pass it back to you, Morné.
Sure.
One is, I called it the steak and beans contest. And we just put 11 teams of our sales people together. They were individually competing and being compensated individually, but we put them on teams, and the winning team at the end of 60 days, we'd take to a fine restaurant with steak and lobster and beautiful cutlery and everything else. And they'd sit on one side of a long table. And the bottom team, team 11, would sit on the other side of the table, and instead of a tablecloth, it would newspapers and paper plates and plastic forks, and the chef with his toque would come out and dollop a bunch of beans on their plate while the other guys across the way. And then at the end, when they came back in the office, we had banners over the 2 teams, the dream team and the bean team. And I don't know that teams fought to be the dream team, but they fought like hell to not be the bean team. And it just brought levity, and it brought camaraderie, and it got together in terms of working together as a team. And the investment, or the cost, I call them investments, was very negligible compared to the results that we produced. Another one is that I had 20 offices around the nation, and I wanted them to be all cooperating within each of the offices. So, but we had people that were operating as almost independent folks in each office. So in order to get that together, we set an agreed upon target as to what their target would be for the month and for the year. And then any month that a team, an office, achieved 130% of the budget for that month, we took everybody in that office to Vegas for 3-day weekend, all expenses paid. And then we had a lottery where we drew the name. Everybody that worked in that office, their name was in the hat. And we drew 5 people's names out. And the first 4 drawn out was worth $500 a piece. And if you pulled your name out, but you didn't want to forego the opportunity to win the grand prize, which was $25,000. And so we had salespeople that just said, I want to stay in for the 25 and throw the $500 back in. And we had other people that were clerical that said, you know what, $500, bird in the hand, I'll take that. And quite frankly, on one of the Vegas trips, the person who won the 25 grand was our director of first impressions, what a lot of companies would call the receptionist. And I still remember her name. Her name was Sarah, and 25 grand was somewhat life-changing. And
absolutely.
but these 20 offices were all now participating within the office and working as a family and as a team. So again, there's more stories about more examples of contests, but I think the contests really are an enhancement to the culture.
I love that. I don't know that I have any stories that can top that. The dream team and the bean team. I'm sure that there is, the audience is probably split. There's people that are thinking, that's great, and then there's people in the audience going, that's horrible. What, those poor people in the bean team? Fair enough. We're not telling you to do any of these things or giving you examples, but of course it's going to be down to, the kind of sales culture that you have. What kind of sales culture are you creating? Is it a more traditional sales culture? Is it something that's a little bit, more consultative? There's no good or bad. There's whatever works for your business. I just love the different examples, Jack. I was going to say something similar. I was going to say, in my experience of what we've done for clients is, if you want to create a sense of togetherness, then people have got to be in it together. Now, again, if you have people in your team that are not carrying their weight, that's going to cause friction. But that probably tells you something about the people that you have in those seats, right? What you want is to be able to, I feel, give individuals some instant gratification. So recognize them for the role that they've played in the sales process, and then have a team incentive so that people are working together and they're saying, let's all do our part, because as you said, there's a contest, there's a trip, there's a something down the road that we can get. So you get a little bit of instant coffee by having a small incentive for doing a good job yourself, but really the big prize is the team prize. That's the way that I would approach it. I love that. Jack,
I have to throw this in after those comments. That particular company that had both of those types of contests that I mentioned and some others ended up being Inc. number 10 on the Inc. 500 with 10,100% growth, and Entrepreneur of the Year from Ernst & Young. Now, if those are not aspirational in your culture, and if that's not something you want as a business owner, I respect that. But if you're interested in really giving a real high charge, then I think that you have a mix of things that are going on in the company. And and again, it's all done in good spirit, good fun.
Absolutely. No, it's I can see how it will definitely bring levity for the right team, for sure. Jack, if you're up for it, maybe we can take a couple more minutes and do one bonus question. I noticed Bill Wood on here, and Bill is actually somebody that I know from Atlanta, and Bill put an interesting question forward. So we'll do one bonus question if you're up for it, and then we'll wrap up this session. So Bill says he's looking for motivators to challenge smart and engaged individuals so that they can elevate themselves from a more tactical, inefficient, and comfortable sales process to where they focus on high payoff activities. Now, I'm going to provide a little bit of context because I happen to have had a follow-up conversation with Bill after he submitted this question. So there's a little bit of context around this. What Bill means with tactical, inefficient, comfortable sales process is that Bill's created a very strong inside sales team. So he's got a sales team who are really good at closing, account management, farming. And what he's now looking for is, how do I get these guys to focus on what he thinks are high payoff activities, which in his mind is, how do I get them to be a little bit more proactive, a little bit more outbound? So I think I'll kick this off by saying this, because I think this is a good learning for anybody on this call who has a strong inside sales team, and you're thinking, man, I wish they could just do a little bit of outbound. I, in fact, had a call with a company yesterday, the exact same challenge. So first and foremost, I have to give you some bad news. Sometimes your inside sales team will never be good at outbound sales. Sometimes you've built an incredibly good team of people that are account managers. And as we said earlier, one of the earlier questions, I think it was Aaron, we said, well, a hunter and a farmer, an account manager, these are not the same people. You know, Jack, I think you famously said a sumo wrestler and a tennis player can both be world-class athletes, but you don't see a lot of sumo wrestlers running around Wimbledon. So you need to have the right person in the right seat to do that job. Now, if your people are incredibly good at account management and farming, they may never be good at outbound. So the first thing that I would do is, Bill, I would evaluate this team. I would evaluate them for those core competencies and see whether there's anybody in this team that has the competencies, the proclivity, the mindset, the beliefs to actually do some outbound. What we don't want to do is evaluate people the wrong way. I don't want to evaluate a fish by its ability to climb a tree. So I want to know if I've got people in that team that are capable of doing outbound, and then I can nurture that if that is in fact the right thing to do. The other thing that I want to know is, if you're talking about motivators, well, what is it that motivates your team? Have you really uncovered that? Because while salespeople are motivated by money, extrinsically motivated, what we now find when we evaluate, especially younger sales teams, millennials, Gen Z, we're finding that they're also intrinsically and altruistically motivated. So they're looking for significance, connection, belonging to a tribe. They want to do good for the world, good for the community. What are all the different motivators that you have in your team? And when you think about the way that you're motivating your people, we almost touched on compensation in a previous question, but Jack will tell you, when we design compensation systems, once we've taken care of like the Maslow hierarchy of needs, the bottom of the pyramid, and we get all the way to the top, then we're looking for non-financial ways to recognize and reward. So do you actually know what motivates your team? Have you done that homework? Because we need to design a motivators for you that are both financial and non-financial. That's only after we've established whether your existing team can be converted into focusing on high payoff outbound activities. Because if not, Bill, you may have to do the long play here and hire some people that are specialists in hunting, door opening new business. And then the final thing that I want to say that you should look at once you've evaluated, you've looked at your motivators, is let's look at your sales process. Let's look at optimizing your sales process, and let's look at what are the high payoff activities in every stage of your sales process. I bet you that you have a pretty good grasp of HPAs when it comes to things like quoting, presenting, closing, follow-up. But maybe what we need to be looking at is, what are the high payoff activities for lead generation, prospecting, and discovery? And once we know what that is, then we can say, do I actually have the people to do it? Or do I need to use recruitment as an upgrade tool and go and find the people to do it? That would be my start on that. What do you think, Jack?
Well, yesterday you sent me a list of the questions that we might tackle today.
Yeah.
And I made a couple notes on each one. And on this one, I didn't have much to write down.
Okay.
I just wrote HUH with a question mark. Like
HUH, okay.
Huh? Like what? What? Look, I'm way more blunt than you are.
Sure.
And so let me try this a couple different ways. If any of the listener viewers know me in any way, and I were to ask you, so where do you think you would put me as a salesperson? Do you think that you would put me in the farmer or the hunter seat? Would you have me as the outside sales team or with the inside sales team? Well, in my audiences over 30 years, if I posed that question to them, the place would be outrageously, uproaringly laughing. And because I would be in the hunter category for sure. Now, that company that we talked about earlier in one of the questions that I said was an Inc. number 10 company, well, we had 120 salespeople in a call center inside sales environment, but we also had 20 some offices around the nation with outbound salespeople. And I had my top performers in each. But if I tried to switch their roles, we would have had a failure as a company. Right. It didn't matter what their work ethic and the attitude, like it's just not a good fit for either one of them. So if you got a kick butt inbound inside sales team that's operating on all cylinders, man, God bless, thank the Lord, and don't screw it up. Don't try to change them. Go hire yourself the right people to do outbound, because those people love being in that role. So for me, I'm not going to try to answer the question on how do I motivate these characters to change their behavior. I want to hire people that are already motivated to be outbound,
Right.
to be hunters. That's the answer. I'm not gonna try to fix what isn't broken. What you've got is great. Leave it be and focus on that outbound.
In fact, I remember, excuse me, I remember when you and I ran the workshops last week. I think it was the sales manager workshop on the Thursday. You said, "How do I motivate salespeople?" You hire them that way.
Yeah, the classic thing is always to my audience is how many people think you don't need to motivate me, right? And I have this expression, I came running out of the womb motivated. Just
Right.
clear the deck and let me go make something happen, right? So I just think he's in an enviable position. He's got
Mhm.
something that really is clicking on all cylinders. Leave it be and let's go build something that's equally as strong on the outbound.